Welcome to a side of Hollywood that the sitcom cameras never wanted you to see, because today we are peeling back the curtain on a man who became a global icon as Sheldon Cooper, but who almost lost everything in a single moment of defiance. Jim Parsons may seem like the ultimate professional, but there was one specific scene, one controversial moment written into a script that he flat out refused to film, and that decision almost ended his career before he could even cement his legacy. Imagine the tension on a high-stakes set where millions of dollars are on the line, and producers are demanding a performance that goes against every moral fiber of the lead actor. We're going to dive deep into the secret standoff that happened behind the scenes, the threats of blacklisting that followed his refusal, and the shocking truth about how one no changed the trajectory of the most successful sitcom in history. Why did he risk it all? What was so disturbing about this scene that he was willing to walk away from a multi-million-dollar paycheck? Stick around until the very end, because the final revelation about who actually stepped in to save his career will absolutely leave you speechless. Before we uncover the truth that the studios tried to bury, please subscribe to the channel and hit that like button right now. Your subscription is vital for the YouTube algorithm to recognize this kind of investigative content, and helps us keep fighting to bring you the stories that the industry prefers to keep hidden. If you want to support our independent work even further, consider a super thanks to help us keep the lights on. But if you can't, simply leave a comment telling us what part of Jim's story surprised you the most. Now, prepare yourself, because the truth about the scene Jim Parsons refused to film is far more complicated than you ever imagined. You'll understand how a single refusal almost shattered the career of the highest paid actor in television history. We first have to go back to the humble beginnings of a man who never expected to become a global phenomenon. Because Jim Parsons' journey from the theater stages of Houston and New York to the glitz of Hollywood was paved with hundreds of rejections that almost broke his spirit long before he ever met Sheldon Cooper. Jim was an actor who thrived on the craft, a man who viewed performance as a sacred bond between the script and the audience, which is why when he finally landed the role of a lifetime on The Big Bang Theory, he approached it with a level of dedication that was almost obsessive. However, the truth that the studio's hidden for years is that as the show's popularity exploded into a multi-billion-dollar empire, the power dynamics behind the scenes began to shift in a dangerous direction, creating a high-pressure environment where the actors were often treated more like assets than human beings. Jim Parsons found himself at the center of a cultural hurricane, earning millions and winning Emmys. But privately, he was beginning to feel the weight of a character that was starting to swallow his true identity. The mystery of his near-career-ending moment begins in the later seasons, where the creative direction of the show started to push boundaries that Jim felt were not only out of character, but fundamentally wrong for the message he wanted to send to the millions of fans who looked up to Sheldon as a hero for the misunderstood. There was a specific week, during a high-stakes table read, where a script was handed out containing a scene so controversial and so out of touch with Jim's personal values that the air in the room turned to ice. Producers expected him to simply fall in line, to be the good soldier and deliver the lines that would guarantee a viral, albeit polarizing, moment for the network's ratings. But they didn't count on Jim's hidden iron will. When he stood his ground and said no, he wasn't just refusing a scene. He was challenging the entire machinery of a hit show that didn't know how to handle an actor who put integrity above a paycheck. The tension that followed was unlike anything seen in sitcom history, with closed-door meetings where lawyers and executives allegedly threatened Jim with breach of contract and hinted that his future in the industry could be permanently tarnished if he became known as difficult. This wasn't just about a joke or a plot point. It was a battle for the soul of his career, and the fallout almost resulted in the show being canceled years earlier than anyone expected. As we peel back the layers of this confrontation, we see a man who was willing to lose the fame, the money, and the security he had worked decades to achieve, all to protect the integrity of his craft. unaware that the industry was already preparing to blacklist him if he didn't surrender to their demands as the standoff intensified behind the closed doors of Warner Brothers Studios. The atmosphere shifted from professional disagreement to an all-out psychological war, because the truth that remained hidden for years is that Jim Parsons wasn't just fighting a script. He was fighting a corporate machine that viewed his refusal as an act of treason against the highest-rated comedy on television. In this second chapter of our investigation, we dive into the murky waters of negotiations that nearly derailed his life, where the stakes were no longer just about a single scene, but about the very survival of his reputation in an industry that rarely forgets or forgives. Producers and network executives, panicked by the thought of losing their golden goose, reportedly began to apply a level of pressure that was almost unbearable, utilizing every legal and emotional lever at their disposal. There were whispers of leaked stories to the press that would paint Jim as an ungrateful diva, a tactic designed to destroy his public image before he could even explain his side of the story. During this period, Jim's personal life became a sanctuary under siege. He was navigating immense pressure of fame while trying to maintain his own mental health, which was rapidly deteriorating under the weight of the conflict. The mystery of why he didn't just give in, especially when the numbers being thrown at him reached the staggering heights of $1 million per episode, lies in his deep-seated belief that Sheldon Cooper represented something more than just a caricature. To Jim, Sheldon was a voice for the neurodivergent community, and the scene he refused to film threatened to turn that voice into a cruel punchline that he simply could not live with. While the public saw him winning awards and smiling on red carpets, the truth was that Jim was spending his nights in hushed conversations with his partner, Todd Spiewak, questioning if he had made a mistake that would lead to him never being hired in Hollywood again. The internal war within the cast also began to simmer, as the other actors realized that if Jim walked away or the show was shut down because of this impasse, their livelihoods were also on the line. It was a pressure cooker of guilt and professional dread. Agents and managers were reportedly frantic, trying to broker a peace deal that didn't exist, while Jim remained steadfast in his silence, refusing to buckle even as the network threatened to sue him for damages that could have wiped out his entire fortune. This wasn't just a career crisis. It was a crisis of identity. Jim Parsons was forced to ask himself, who am I when the cameras stop rolling? Am I the man they bought, or am I the man I see in the mirror? This period of his life was marked by profound isolation, as the very people who had helped him rise to the top were now the ones trying to force his hand through intimidation, was delivered, film the scene, or prepare for the end of the show in a lawsuit that would define the rest of his life. Little did they know, Jim was already preparing his exit strategy, a move that would eventually shock the world and change the landscape of television forever to Part 3, The Secret Ally and the explosive final ACT. The endgame of the conflict that nearly destroyed Jim Parsons' career was not a loud explosion, but a series of quiet, devastating realizations that forced the most powerful people in Hollywood to blink first, because the truth that finally came to light was that Jim wasn't just willing to lose his career. He was already at peace with it ending. In this final chapter, we reveal the hidden turning point where the studio's intimidation tactics backfired, and it all started with a secret ally who stepped out of the shadows to stand beside him. While the executives were busy sharpening their legal knives, some of his castmates, moved by Jim's unwavering moral compass, reportedly signaled that if Jim was pushed out or sued, the unity of the group would shatter, effectively holding the billion-dollar franchise hostage in a show of solidarity that the network never saw coming. This internal rebellion shifted the power dynamic instantly, turning the difficult actor narrative on its head and exposing producers' desperation. However, the mystery of the refused scene remained the core of the trauma. It was a catalyst that made Jim realize that the creative well of the Big Bang Theory had not just run dry, but was turning into something he no longer recognized. Shook the industry was that Jim's refusal of that one scene wasn't just a singular act of defiance. It was a canary in the coal mine. It led him to the heartbreaking decision to walk away from the show entirely at the end of season 12, leaving an estimated $50 million on the table. The industry was in shock. Nobody walks away from that kind of money unless something is fundamentally broken. Today, the truth has emerged that Jim's mental exhaustion and the grief over the loss of his father years prior had caught up with him, making the toxic battle over the script the final straw. He chose his soul over his salary. By standing his ground, Jim Parsons didn't just save his integrity. He redefined what power looks like in Hollywood, proving that a career is only worth having if you can live with a man in the mirror. He successfully transitioned into highbrow theater and prestige film, effectively beating the blacklist that once threatened to erase him. His story serves as a chilling reminder that in the glitzy world of sitcoms, the biggest battles are fought when the audience isn't looking. Thank you for staying with us through this deep dive into the hidden war of Sheldon Cooper. If this story touched you, please subscribe and hit the like button. Your support allows us to keep telling the stories Hollywood wants to bury. If you can support us with a super thanks, or simply comment below. Do you think Jim was right to risk it all for one scene? Now, don't go anywhere. Click on the video appearing on your screen right now, because it is even more fascinating and gripping than this one. Trust me,